Jesse Stratton, welcome to the 525 Records podcast.
Thanks, Elliot. It's good to be here.
It's good to have you here. We are live from Los Angeles, live from the end of the world, rolling hot. Hollywood's a fascinating place. As a kid, I always wanted to move here to be a rock star.
Did you really? That was a goal?
Big goal. It always was the embodiment of anybody that didn't want to work a 9-to-5 job and become rich and famous through the arts. I dropped out of high school because I was going to be a rock and roll guitar player. Why do I need a college degree?
Wait, now I'm learning something new. I didn't realize that you dropped out of high school.
Well, in California, they have what's called a proficiency exam, and at 15, you can take a test to allow you to escape the nightmare that is California public high school. But, we were several times going to run away as teenagers to come to Hollywood. And, that reminds me, recently I played, you remember Randy Newman?
Oh, yeah.
That song, I Love L.A.
Oh, yeah.
It was a big Lakers, theme song. But watch that video today. I was like, this video and song is going to be canceled any day now due to its toxic masculinity. It's just all about chicks, and it's just hot chicks, and the themes in it, just it's frightening because it was totally accepted at the time.
Yeah.
And, but you don't see it for 30 years, times change, and then before you know it, oh my God, this thing is a sexist, complete toxic piece of shit.
It's true. I mean, it seems like we're waking up over and over again. Every day you wake up and realize that you've been acting badly for your whole life. What you thought was funny isn't funny, and you think, I've learned, I progressed, I know how to behave, and then the next day you wake up again like, oh my, well, I shouldn't have been thinking that. I shouldn't have thought this. It's interesting. I mean, I enjoy that. I enjoy being challenged in that way. Constantly, coming up against the new paradigm is interesting.
I'm glad you brought that up because that's a whole topic I wanted to get into.
Oh boy.
I was saving it for later, but we're going to jump right into it.
Okay.
Have you ever seen the movie Bagger Vance?
I have not. No.
You've seen Donnie Darko.
Yes, I have seen Donnie Darko a couple times.
I haven't seen any of these recently, but there's a podcast that I absolutely love that was talking about the very thing today. I hope I pronounced this right. Please correct me. The Bhagavad Gita.
Bhagavad Gita, yeah.
Carlos Castaneda.
Yes.
The illusion that freedom from choice is what it's all about. A choice is really an illusion. You can watch a movie like Bagger Vance, and it can be, on one level, in the ego mind, all about free will and choices. But on a much deeper level, it's about the exact opposite. The whole idea that as you become spiritually awake, you start to let go of material reality and possessions, and the things that you were passionate about, you don't care about anymore. It's sort of the death of passion is a feature of your spiritual enlightenment. You start to realize, what is this reality? Death is the only thing that's certain. You live in fear of it your entire life, but when you, like a samurai, the samurai's creed was, if you have a choice between life or death, always choose death.
Right.
The Buddhist notion of reincarnation, that humans are the top of the spiritual food chain, and if you screw up, you go back to being an animal, whatever. I don't know how the animals feel about that, to quote the podcast.
Well, that's interesting. We're here in Los Angeles, where people are striving either because they're insane or because they actually are talented to, quote unquote, achieve their dreams, which is generally just to get their idea out, right? So yeah, if that's true, if spiritual evolution means the giving up of all hoped for things, then that's a difficult thing to do, because does that mean if I have a story that I think the world needs to hear, that in order for me to quote unquote evolve, does that mean letting go of the striving to get that out, the not writing it down, the not telling people it? Does that mean that story goes away, and then, I don't know, we end up at some very Buddhist thing where the only art is just like a beautiful field and we look at it, turn away and walk away? I don't know, that's weird.
But the idea that you kind of accept reality as is, and you're powerless, really. It's like holding back the ocean with a 2x4, but you still make the conscious changes you can in your life at a very small level. What's right, you try to do it, but you realize that, it's okay, and letting go of your material possessions, being like a lot of near-death experience people will tell you when they come back that, all of a sudden I didn't care about this place at all. It's just my kids, everything that really meant something to me vaporized. And for that brief little escrow, I didn't care about any of that stuff. And it was free, and it felt great. It felt liberating. I think that's kind of in the same vein.
Yeah. Interesting.
And, like time itself. He had a great analogy. When you're on a train, you're still, and the scenery's whizzing by you. So the perception is that, the scenery's moving and you're still.
Right.
And if you think about time like that, it's very similar. Like if you go for a walk, trying to get to a place where you're just like you are on the train, you're conscious that you're moving, but it's not you that's moving. It's the world moving around you, And if time is linear and when you're reincarnated, you're multiple people at different points in time,
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. It's always been my biggest fear that the universe is just some brain running through permutations, just seeing how the human experience can be either crushing or liberating or joyful or terrifying, depending on which mind it chooses to observe at any given time. And I'm always horrified that I might be the particular vessel of crushing terror and depression. Or, so what if I'm Job? What if the supercomputer doing these algorithms trying to see like what would happen to an individual if we did everything terrible to them? I was like, please don't let me be that.
Yeah, but like you were talking about the screwing up over and over again as a human. You try to do the right thing and then you wake up over and over again.
Yeah.
And it's like this path, this evolutionary path that people fear death. They fear the death of their body, but it's really, the thing they would fear is not the death. It's what happens after that.
Right.
The character's name in Bagger Vance is Randall Juna. And there's something in the Bhagavad Gita of Arjuna. And he's starting a war that he doesn't realize or comes to realize it was out of his control the whole time. And so that was the theme I was trying to get across. But I was hoping maybe you were more versed in this than I was. And,
when it comes,
you could enlighten me.
Well, when it comes to the Bhagavad Gita, I am not actually. I haven't actually read it. And the closest I came to experiencing any sort of reading of that book was at Lilith Fair, I think, in like 1996, when one of the Hare Krishnas came up and tried to force it into my hands, but I never did read it.
But the death of the ego is a very prevalent theme. When you take DMT, when you take mushrooms, any kind of that stuff, you have the strange ego death, and the things just don't matter to you anymore. And it's interesting.
It is. Yeah, no, it's fascinating. The concept of letting go of ego is at once terrifying and yet... Yeah, like you said, when people have near-death experiences, they cease to care about things like their children and stuff like that. On one side, it's horrible. On the other side, it must be so liberating to let go of those threads,
Like, what is this place? What are we all doing here,
Well, it's what it is. I mean, the same way you're tied familially and genetically to your offspring, and you're forced by the mandate of nature to love them and care for them. I mean, the same way when we're waking up and realizing, oh, that Randy Newman song isn't really funny anymore. We're feeling the strings of culture, tugging at us in a certain way, saying, love this, don't love this, let go of this, come to this. And we have to just figure out whether or not we agree or want to take a stand against it.
Last night, in preparation for this, I was on the iPad and I rented a movie.
Uh-huh.
Its title is 37: A Final Promise.
Oh, yeah.
It stars, I don't want to butcher his last name, so help me out, Randall
Batinkoff.
Batinkoff.
Yep.
He wrote, directed, and starred in this.
Yep.
But you're also a big part of the writing process.
Yes.
I remember living in Vegas. You sent me the screenplay, and I read through it, and I was so proud and happy because you wrote me in as a character.
Yes, I did.
The movie is about a band, a rock band in Hollywood,
Yep.
they're all rich and famous, and the bass player is Elliot Kotz,
Yes.
who that's my real
Yep.
name, and the screenplay goes to describe him in great detail,
Yeah.
and it's very accurate. However, due to editing, he's in a couple of scenes,
Yeah.
doesn't have a lot of dialogue,
Yeah.
and looks nothing like me. But that was a big moment, 2013, 2014, you had just moved to Hollywood.
Yep.
What, like, you're living in Chicago,
Right. Yes.
and you say, I'm going to make the leap. I'm going to move to Hollywood. Like, what did it for you? What, like, threw you over the edge?
Well, I was thinking about moving. I mean, I'd been doing a lot of writing in Chicago and practicing my craft, but sort of going nowhere. It's sort of like the Pentagon, where you create something, but then it never sees the light of day by virtue of never really actually trying to like bring it into the world. Show people, try to sell it. I thought, well, Wes Cardino, our friend Wes, is out here. He's working. He was at AFI, at the American Film Institute at the time. I helped on a project that he did on the writing side of things. I won't say I wrote it because you can't write a project for AFI if you're not a student, but I did help, and it did pretty well. It went on to do fairly well, and I was like, well, that's a good thing. It shows I can actually put something out in the Hollywood, from Hollywood, and it will be recognized as at least decent. So I went out to kind of get a lay of the land, and Wes hooked me up. He'd been in Africa shooting a film with Randall Batinkoff in it. And Randall had approached him, I believe, and said, like, I have a project that I'd like to do, and I'd like you to shoot it. And it laid nascent for a little while, and then he being Randall, sent Wes the script, and he said, it's kind of there, but I'd like to get someone's eyes on it. And it just so happened that I was visiting Wes, just kind of seeing what LA was like, and Wes was like, I have a friend who's in town that does really good script notes, and so sure enough, I got hired for it. I think there was some pay involved. It wasn't a lot, but there was some pay for me.
It's an indie movie.
Yeah, it's an indie film. So I did the notes. I went through it line by line and kind of came up with what I thought worked, what I thought didn't. It was based on a true story, and it was a romance. And I had a follow-up call with Randall and the other co-writer of the original screenplay, Guy Blues. And they liked my notes. They were very thankful, very gracious. It was awesome. It was a really great experience. And then they called me back like an hour later and asked if I would do the second draft of the script, kind of like a page one rewrite based on their stuff. And so I was like, I'm here. I've done it. I'm in. And I just decided, why not?
So Randall, who directs, stars, and is also a writer on the project, he's the band is very big. Their name is Wendigo, as I recall. And it's kind of a love story, very dark, but also very spiritual. Yeah, in the sense that death is a part of life, right? And we're all destined for the same thing, right? At the end of the day, I think the ending is particularly good. But to bring people up to speed, it's titled 37: A Final Promise. The main character, which Randall plays, is the singer in the band, and he has a younger brother who dies a very tragic death at a very young age. And it turns out his death, even though he had a horrible terminal disease, it was actually Randall's character, who was Adam, who administers the final dose of morphine or whatever it is to, and there's a corollary. Metallica had a very famous video entitled One. Oh, yeah. And it was based on, I believe, the same book. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it's about a soldier who loses his arms, legs, eyes, ears, everything. And he can't speak, and they're trying to keep him alive. Yeah. And then when he finally is able to communicate, he says, "Please kill me." Yeah.
And that's Johnny Got His Gun by Dalton Trumbo.
Thank you. Yep. I'm glad you know that.
Yep. Yeah.
And it's referenced in the movie, and, It's but what I'm really curious about is what the state of that script was before you got involved, because
Sure.
Adam, the character in the movie played by Randall,
Right.
has a lot of interesting tattoos.
Yes.
One of them is a 37 over his heart,
Right.
which is referenced in the film
Right.
as and this is where, if you're not into Kabbalah and Gematria, it gets you get lost a little bit. In Hebrew, every letter has a number, and it's synonymous. He's got a Kabbalah tree of life on his left arm. He's got a very interesting tattoo on his other arm, and he's got 37 on his chest,
Right.
which is 3 times 7, which equals 21.
Right.
Which, when you reduce it even further, is another 3. These are very powerful numbers in this kind of vein. So how much of that was your injection?
It's the true thing is that the person that script is based on, and it is based on a true story, actually did have 37. I don't believe it was on their heart. I could be wrong about that. I think it was on the arm, but the conceit is that the character and this person in real life was saying, at 37 years old, I'm going to kill myself. And I presume that a lot of people just kind of laughed at that, just like thinking it was ridiculous, but it was really a real oath. So that tattoo was real, and it played a part, that I'm going to kill myself at 37 played a part in the original story. It was a very pivotal thing. But what I wanted to bring to it, because I get down into the supernatural horror thing. I've always been into the occult, just not that I'm a practicing occultist, but I've always been interested in it. I was trying to inject that into the story a little bit. And so in looking at 37, I realized, oh my God, there's some significance here that works in the story. And so, yes, I injected the tree of life and stuff. But.
And well, if I could interject here, the character in the film has a very interesting symbol tattoo that I have never seen. Mm-hmm. And I'm a passing hobbyist when it comes to occult symbology. And if I could interject again, occult just means hidden.
Sure.
It's hidden knowledge. Yes. When there's an eclipse, it's, one body occulting the other.
Right.
It's an actual term.
Right.
But we've been so programmed in our day and age to think of occult as evil.
Yeah. There's no Satan involved in any of this. So.
And it's a path of knowledge, and hidden knowledge in particular, and the secrets of the universe, right? But the character has basically an upside down pyramid surrounded by a circle. Yeah. Enclosed in a square, which if you're hip to Masonic symbology, it's the compass and the square. Squaring the circle is a very famous mathematical problem. Very famous scene in another movie called Apollo 13, where in order to save the astronauts, they have to put a square peg in a round hole. Right. This is all old stuff. Yeah. So talk me through that symbol.
Well, that I believe, when you do a movie, or when someone conceives of a movie, and I'm not saying I'm that someone. I'm just saying any screenwriter or director who wants to bring something to the stage, they hopefully surround themselves with very talented people in every department. That would have been something that the makeup person or possibly the wardrobe person came up with from their own investigation. So as far as the significance of the particular tattoo that you're talking about, is actually probably something that someone else came up with. I don't actually remember the tattoo.
And this is what fascinates me about this movie, which is available on iTunes for rent. You can go watch it. Highly recommend it. It's dark. But if you're into music, the other thing I was going to get at was the Malibu. Who had that Malibu house?
Oh, that was a beautiful house. I don't remember. It was rented by the production. Don't quote me on this. I believe that whoever built that house, and here's a little bit of, someone wants to get super rich. I think the person that owned that house or built that house actually designed and produced sex toys. So that is a house that was built by vibrators.
Interesting.
Yeah. It was a gorgeous house. Yeah.
Well, in the same kind of vein, there's a very famous album by the Red Hot Chili Peppers entitled Blood Sugar Sex Magic, produced by Rick Rubin. Yeah. They rented Houdini's old mansion, and the parallels between magic and the occult are very, very thick. The band in the film is kind of a metal band. They're very dark music. And I'm just wondering, I always wondered how much of that was you and how much of that was there before you got involved in the script.
Yeah, as I recall, in the original script, he was a musician, but it was not focused on that much. That's what I felt like needed to happen from reading the original script. It was like, there's a lot of things that this guy does. He's kind of a Renaissance man, but we need to focus on one thing. So I made him the headliner of a group, and I wanted it to be dark. I told him, look, dude, I know we can't get Tool, to do this album, but this is what I'm envisioning. I'm thinking of a, sort of a prog rock, like, super band, very thoughtful in their approach to music and stuff. And so, that was something that I really tried to bring to the second draft of the script.
It kind of adds a depth to his character that I don't think was there before. But this is what I really want to get at is Randall on the same page as you on all this stuff, or was this all news to him?
He understood. I mean, I was very open with him, and he was very God. You can't ask for a better first experience working firstly on one person's real story and another person's first draft, being Randall's, first draft. He was very open to what I was saying, and he's an actor, and so I think that he heard what I was saying, he read what was on the page, and he interpreted it. So if you saw it in the film, if you saw that coming through, then that's him, that's not me.
And
so, yeah.
He's an actor. Is he also a musician?
I don't believe so. No. I don't think any of the guys who are in the band are actually musicians.
So where does the inspiration come for Randall to generate that first draft of this band and musicians?
Well, in the first draft, I don't believe that the whole band thing really wasn't in the first draft.
Really?
No.
So talk me through the first draft. What is it about?
The first draft is about the same thing. I was coming at it not being from Hollywood, and this was just my interpretation at the time. I felt like what needed to happen was we needed to see a very soulful depiction of this protagonist character that Randall is playing. And the first draft, to me, as I was reading it, God, they could have filmed it and maybe I would have missed the mark entirely. But I felt like the character was just a little too Los Angeles. It was like he had a lot of money and he liked to show it off, and he had, his fingers in a whole lot of different things, which were all really cool. But I was like, we're making this character a little too cool, a little too perfect, and just kind of also all over the board. He's rich and does get all these different things. Let's just make him a musician. In the first draft, I believe he had a band, but it was hardly referenced.
I mean, in the movie, the band is what kind of brings the center to the table.
Right.
And, his in the movie, it definitely seems not like your typical LA douche. You know? He's aware of LA and enjoys all the excesses, but that's not what he's all about.
Right. Right.
But there's a beautiful car in that movie.
There is.
It's a Porsche.
Yes.
911.
Yes.
Do you remember what year it was? Where did you guys get that car?
I can't remember. I'm not sure who scored that vehicle, but it was gorgeous.
A sweet convertible.
Yeah.
There's a ton of shots of you guys driving up and down the PCH.
Yeah.
It's just...
You have a car like that, you've got to use it. Yeah.
Cinematic gold.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I haven't seen the film in a long time because there are points at which I'm just like, like anything, just like the music, you cringe when you hear parts of it, and then parts of it you're really happy about.
I thought that, overall they did a really good job with the music. I read last night, I wanted to mention it, but I forget who. There's a series of people responsible for the original music.
Yeah.
And one of the songs is, interestingly enough, titled Q. Which
interesting.
Recently, because I'm into all kinds of crazy podcasts, there's an obscure cult movie from the 70s called Q,
the Winged Serpent.
You fucking seen this movie?
I know all things horror.
Get the fuck out of here!
Yeah.
I can't. Nobody's seen this movie. I thought I was going to surprise you.
No, I know about that. I mean, I didn't have anything to do with the name of the song, but I know the movie.
The movie Q, the Winged Serpent, is based in New York, and it's some kind of flying serpent.
Quetzalcoatl, I think.
Likes to whack window washers, and there's all these crazy cheap horror scenes of people on the street level getting splattered with blood from above and looking up, and then before you know it, it's Q taking another one off. But the symbology in that movie is like crazy in today's time. But anyway, interesting side note.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that film was fun. It was interesting to write in that darker material into a story that was going to turn dark. But
one of the scenes is they're getting married. Mm-hmm. She has ALS, tragically.
Yes.
Which, to get ALS, I've learned this now through other reasons, but to be female and young and to get ALS, extremely rare.
Yes.
Usually you have about a 3-year window.
Yes.
The reason I know about ALS is because I watch a comedy podcast they do from the Comedy Store on Sunset. It's called Kill Tony. And it's a very famous comedian, Tony Hinchcliffe. They bring up open micers, and if you do good enough, they make you a regular. Mm-hmm. And one of the regulars that was sort of made in mob terms last year is a guy that has ALS.
Really?
His name's Michael Lehrer. He's hilarious. He's from Queens, New York. Mm-hmm. He, for some random thing, was my very first Twitter follower. I only have 9 followers, so that says a lot. But because I'm such a huge Kill Tony fan, I watch every week on Monday, 8 p.m. He's an incredible writer. He writes a ton of really good stuff. One of the skits he wrote that was recently, it was Jack Ruby's Steakhouse.
Oh, God.
During the plague, one of my favorite restaurants is still open. It's Jack Ruby's Steakhouse. Old world, traditional style Italian cuisine from the man who killed the man who killed the president.
His actions may have been ordered by Jimmy Hoffa, but his dishes are all, in a word, groovy. Mobster, assassin, fall guy. We may never know, but even the Warren Commission can agree on this. You'll never have better garlic mashed potatoes. Zagat says Jag Ruby sounds like a stage name, and these dishes are Ruby's stage, as well as the police basement where he gunned down Lee Harvey Oswald. What did Oswald know? Something about Kennedy or the recipe to this tremendous ragu. We'll never know, so judge for yourself. Mobsters just like me and you, violent foodies, so it's going to be a good sauce.
Another one is, a lot of people don't know this, but on 9/11, the very first flight was American Airlines Flight 11. Mm-hmm. There was 2 very famous people that were supposed to be on that flight. One of them was Mark Wahlberg.
Yeah.
The other one was Seth MacFarlane.
Oh, I didn't realize Seth MacFarlane was supposed to be.
Yes, okay. Nobody does.
Okay.
Nobody does that's not balls deep into conspiracy like I am.
Yeah.
So he did another skit where, what if Mark Wahlberg was on the plane, single-handedly fought all the terrorists and took back control, and I can't do the impression. It's hilarious. You have to go check it out, but it's very, very funny. So ALS is a horrible way to die. It's horrible, and it takes a long time.
Yeah,
it's very tragic. So does Randall have some knowledge of ALS? Like, how do you give this character ALS?
As I recall, in real life, which is the bane of a writer's existence, when someone writes a script that goes, but in real life, this happened. In real life, I believe the person who inspired that character had MS.
Very similar.
Yeah, very similar. But it just seemed to me, I have some experience with MS because my high school girlfriend's mother had it. So we've been together for a couple of years, so I was seeing it. And, I just was like, well, a lot of people know MS, but a lot of times it's not as... It doesn't degrade the person as much as this particular situation was. So I looked into it and I was like, let's just up the stakes for the average viewer so they can see and understand immediately that this disease is incurable and fatal. So I looked it up.
And this is one of the things that was not in the first draft?
It was not. I believe it was multiple sclerosis in the first draft.
Interesting.
Yeah, and Scotty Thompson, who plays the girl who has it, I know attended some, I believe it was group therapy for people with the disease. So she, as an actress, went into that.
It's startlingly accurate. One of the first things that happens is you start to trip and fall down.
Yeah.
That happens in the movie quite a bit.
Yep.
It's a very big theme in the movie, But the rage against the dying of the light scene, that was written in. Everybody's got to die, right? And it's just a matter of when.
Yep.
And it's, as dark as the movie is, it's a celebration of life at the same time. And especially the end with the dolphins. Am I crazy? Because the end, it's not really, it's sort of implied that he's chasing his brother who, he made this promise to into the ocean to sort of fulfill the promise.
Yes.
And then the very end credits, it rolls, it says Adam still lives in Malibu.
Right.
He's with the dolphins every day, something to that extent.
Yeah. As I recall, there was a scene in the film that we couldn't shoot because of logistics, but he takes Scotty's character out in the ocean, and there are dolphins out there, and she desperately wants to swim with them, but she's already sick at that point. He doesn't want to let her go in the water because he's afraid she's going to drown or whatever, but she insists and swims with them. And, I just was like, something about that seemed appropriate to me. It's the human body entering an alien atmosphere and living in it for a moment, the way that you slip into death, So, but she was able to swim in it and was surrounded by things that live in that place. And unfortunately, we never shot it. And so we also missed a big chance because we were during the wedding ceremony on the beach while we were setting up. We were almost ready to go. A pod of dolphins appeared out in the water.
As they do in the Pacific between here and Catalina.
Just jumping, and I was like, can we roll? And, we couldn't do it, but it would have been amazing. It would have been a great, it
might have, it would have been a production value.
Very big production value, but it didn't happen, unfortunately.
Having sailed to Catalina a number of times, it's very common for dolphins to ride with you on the bow.
Yep.
That would have, but the dolphin itself, it's regarded as one of the more smart mammals.
Yes.
They've got a surface to breathe.
Yes.
And just like we were talking about earlier about spiritual enlightenment, the allegory of Plato's cave, right? You guys in a cave, that's all they know their whole life. One of them escapes, sees the real world, much like a dolphin surfacing.
Yeah.
Can't possibly fathom outer space.
Right.
It only knows the underwater world, yet it has to come up to breathe every once in a while to encounter this world.
Yep.
Plato's cave analogy it's so relevant today because the shadows on the wall consume the majority of people, and to the point where they don't want the outside world.
Yep.
They don't want to escape the cave. It's comfortable in there. And when you do escape the cave and you try to tell the other people, hey, look, come on here.
Yeah.
They kill you.
Yeah, they're mad. Yeah, they cut you into pieces or put you on a cross.
But dolphins, very famously, they probably one of the few species that can actually communicate with humans. They have their own songs, their sonar. They're really incredibly intelligent animals, even though they live underwater. So, to me, the metaphor is right. But
I for some reason that seemed important, and I'm glad at least it remained in some way.
I'm glad you brought the wedding scene because that's a beautiful segue. There's a person that makes a cameo in this movie from a very famous band. One of used to be, maybe still is, one of my favorite bands, System of a Down.
Yeah.
Love them or hate them.
Right.
They're all Armenian.
Yep.
They are crazy live.
Yes.
They, the music you can't knock. It's incredible.
Yep.
The bass player Shavo is in the film. He plays the preacher.
Yeah.
He fits the part perfectly.
Yes.
He's got the crazy goatee.
Yes.
My favorite line though is, and this is what I'm dying to know, if it was written or if it was improv.
Okay.
There's the wedding scene. He says, something to the effect of, let's thank Yahweh, Buddha, Jesus, Krishna.
Yes.
And then at the very end, he says, System of a Down.
That was definitely Chavo. Yeah, he came and he wanted to do that line.
And it made the final cut.
Oh, it's great. Yeah, of course.
Were there any alternate takes without
I don't believe so. I think he came. He said, "I want to say this." It was approved by Randall, and they may have taken a couple of couple of different takes, but it was the same every time. Yeah.
And Chavo also, is very involved in other film projects.
Yeah.
He's an actor,
Yes,
financer, director, all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, so he understood the process, and he was very cool. He just sat out and waited for his time on screen, and otherwise he was just sitting up on the deck, and you could walk up and just sit and chat for a while. He was a cool guy.
I just, the last thing I think of when I go down the list of Yahweh, Elohim, Buddha, Krishna, System of a Down.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, why not? It could be
Rocks,
worse. Right?
gods, right? Yeah.
But it, being that the characters in the movie are in a very similar band, it might as well be System of a Down.
Right.
They're rich and famous,
Right.
and played a lot.
Yeah.
Darren Malakian gave guitar lessons, and there's some old footage of him. He was a guitar teacher.
Oh, really?
At one point, But, when Darren gets on stage, he's like not Darren anymore, I mean,
Yep.
his persona on stage, much like an actor or whatever, it's just so intense and so crazy,
Yep.
whereas Serge is more kind of level-headed, intellectual thinking. Chavo's just Chavo playing the bass, the drummer's killer.
Yep.
But, so a lot of parallels there, I thought.
Yeah. Yeah, it was very cool to have
But
him on board.
You, to me, you seem like a guy that never dreamed of moving to Hollywood.
No.
It just sort of happened.
Yes.
And it happened around this film.
Yeah.
In particular.
Right.
So what was it like that first... You're in Chicago, you're going to jump to Hollywood. Were you excited? Were you like, I'm just going to go there for a little while and then move back? Did you ever think you'd still be here?
No, I didn't know. All I knew was that I didn't know, and that it was, I didn't have any illusions that I was going. I mean, I was, it was in my 30s, so I wasn't thinking, I'm going to move there and get famous. Like, I had obviously not gotten famous at that point, so I was just like, I'm going to just do my best. And so, no, but I don't think I expected it to play out the way that it did. So,
I mean, I dreamed of moving to Hollywood as a teenager.
Yeah.
Hollywood as a bygone era of golden greatness. Like,
Right.
I don't know. Did you see Once Upon a Time in Hollywood?
Sure. Yeah.
I mean, just the whole era of that time and point, the 60s, Laurel Canyon, Charles Manson,
Yeah.
all the things that were going on. Hollywood has a very rich occult history as well.
Yes.
There was a very famous base on Lookout Mountain. I believe Jared Leto bought the property for $50 million a couple of years ago. But people like John Wayne, Marilyn Monroe, they would go up there and cut basically propaganda films. It was an entire film studio, recording studio, right in the heart of Laurel Canyon on Lookout Mountain. And it was going on at the same exact time as the Laurel Canyon explosion. And everybody thinks that the hippies started in San Francisco, but it really started in Laurel Canyon right here in Hollywood. Those guys sort of migrated up north, and it turned into what it turned into.
Yeah.
But, it's crazy because most people that wind up out here always dream of moving out here. And you're one of these guys that sort of had a job and you came out and you stayed. You know? But Hollywood today versus that bygone era of the 60s and 70s, how much it's changed, and just the culture and the environment. I mean, what is your take on it?
I mean, yes, it's almost like is ingrained in the American mind. This like golden Hollywood as like the Wild West is. It's just like it's an archetype that we have. It's just like it's almost a genre in our imaginations. But when I moved out here, I was expecting very vapid people, very plastic people. I was just terrified that I was not going to have like authentic interactions with people anymore. But it turns out, of course, that that's not true. That there are very awesome people here, and but because I never really believed that shining city existed, I don't miss it when I'm here. I mean, when I go to Hollywood, I can still see some beauty in the history, even though there's trash and urine and bums and all that kind of stuff.
And the TikTok millionaires, because this is how it seems to me. I don't live here, but I commute. the TikTok movement, the younger generation coming up, it's so everything Hollywood never was. The fourth wall completely broken.
Sure.
You're just dancing on TikTok and posting selfies, and you're a trillionaire.
Yeah.
And now you got all these hype houses where these kids do these TikTok videos. They're taking over.
Yeah.
And it's crazy because like one of the things that happened recently I wanted to get your take on was SAG eliminated health insurance. And it's a big talking point in the lefty liberal podcasts.
Yeah.
But it just like if that doesn't say it all right there, and if you'll recall, I'm just talking so much here, but Robert Downey Jr., because we mentioned Brian Schaefer.
Right.
He was on Howard Stern not too long ago, and they were, Scorsese came out and said, there's no cinema anymore. It's just action heroes, which RDJ got, pretty upset about, and it was a very public thing on Stern. But that's, it says it all.
Yeah.
That with SAG taking away health insurance. Are you in the SAG-AFTRA?
I am not. I'm not an actor, so I don't deal with them. I am not WGA, not yet. I hope to change that soon, but no, I'm not a part of any guild.
Where do you see the industry going in terms of cinema?
I don't know. We dictate that, unfortunately, by virtue of what we consume. When I first came out here, before this, I'd done the script went away to pre-production, as far as I knew, it was never going to get made. And now I'm in Los Angeles, and what do? I took a job at a visual effects house, not because I'm a visual effects artist, but because they needed somebody to run drives around at town and, drop off footage at labs. But I was adopted by the Grip and Electric guys, these older gentlemen. And so I started to learn lighting and grip, and then eventually transitioned into that world. So I also do key grip work here. It's a weird thing. So, I've had an opportunity to work, I'm the key grip for the Hollywood Reporter Roundtables, so I get a lot of exposure to like these A-list celebrities and stuff like that. But I also, I've worked on, when Vine was a thing, I worked on a feature film that involved like kids who were just Vine stars that were just like, now they're in a movie for some reason. And it's a little, I don't know, between those two worlds of like, oh, here's today I'm working with Al Pacino and Martin Scorsese, I'm lighting them, and then tomorrow I'm lighting, some 19-year-old kid who does makeup videos.
And this is the heart of the transition, because Al Pacino, a gifted actor, creating art in his own way. This is what Hollywood was always about.
Yeah.
The culture of celebrity was you were an artist that had some art to provide to the world.
Sure.
The culture of celebrity in Hollywood now is just, there is no art. It's just me, and I'm good looking, and I'm on TikTok or whatever.
Right. Well, I am not a cultural, I'm not like the bellwether of culture or anything like that, but I know that the more and more we are uprooted from the basic foundation of what makes art, allegory and all these types of things, the less inclined we are to enjoy stories that hearken to anything that's deep and mythological, because we have no grounding. My girlfriend works in a public school system here in the Los Angeles area. I won't say where, but it's not in LA, but in the surrounding area. She's working with juniors and seniors who have no concept of symbolism. No concept of symbolism. Don't understand, like, do you see that this is a parallel with the Garden of Eden? Well, what's the Garden of Eden?
Right.
If you're not interested in mythology, if you're not interested in that type of stuff, then you're not interested in story. So it's much more interesting to watch a kid pratfall or,
It's quick, it's instantaneous, instant gratification.
Right.
And to quote Quentin Tarantino, you want subversion on a massive level.
Right.
There's this famous clip where they're talking about Top Gun and how it's one of the greatest scripts ever written. No writer would ever say that. But when you look at it through that lens of, oh my God, this is a story of a man against his own sexuality.
Right.
It's the greatest script ever written. And subversion on a massive level, the art of writing. And I always saw you as a guy who was an actor, a performer, a writer, a director, and then you wind up in Hollywood on a lark, and
Right.
you transition into a different role, you know?
Yeah.
But as a guy that misses the old Hollywood
Right.
greatly, you know,
Right.
I long for the old days of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. It's a mythical, magical place
Right.
where you could reinvent yourself, much like Las Vegas.
Yeah.
You know, and
Oh, yeah.
Seattle was always the outpost for the last resort for criminals on their way out of
Right.
town. You could reinvent yourself into this, and this is something Jim Carrey talks about a lot, where, you know, he's had this whole spiritual renaissance, love him or hate him, Jim Carrey,
Sure.
whatever. But when you create a persona, create a character that you use as a vehicle, you get pigeonholed into that, much like Hunter S. Thompson or any of these other guys.
Right.
And, you know, the choices you make when you're improvising, very telling. And, you know, once that persona gets out of control, you're stuck, and you better be very careful, you
Yes.
know. But that's Hollywood, and that's the old Hollywood, the swingers Hollywood,
Right.
in a nutshell.
Yep.
And you know, the thought of cinema going away. I mean, most great indie films are sort of passion projects that were funded by people that had studio gigs or whatever. When that all goes away, what are we left with?
I probably video games is my guess. Yeah.
Twitch.
I mean, yeah, I don't know. It will be either interesting or not at all interesting to see where we end up. I'm not sure. All I know is that narcissism seems to be on the rise, and I feel like that's kind of, I mean, you're talking about subversion. I have the feeling that I'm a little too old to understand the importance of memes in general, that the kids love to post and trade with each other, but that appears to me to be like their idea of subversion, but with...
To make a callback again, we started out talking about Bagger Vance.
Yeah.
You can watch it on one level in the ego mind and see a guy playing golf, making free choices. But when you really dive into it, the character name, the ties to spiritual enlightenment that, you know, to quote somebody else, because I'm not this brilliant, but, you know, the freedom from choice versus the illusion of choice. And when you really get into, what is this place? What are we doing here?
Yeah.
Am I really in control, or is all this happening for a reason? You know, fate versus free will, that kind of thing. It's all, you know, very similar parallels.
Sure. That's interesting, Elliot. I don't know. I just said the word narcissist, then you talked about the freedom of choice. I mean, in some way, that's the dark side of that Kabbalistic tree of life. On one side, you have the person who's given up or has surrendered and no longer makes choice and is thus elevated. And then you have on the other side the dark part of that, this narcissism, someone who's so, I mean, we see it on a political level these days. We see it everywhere if you look for it, you will see it. And a narcissist is really just a reactive thing. There's no choice involved. You can pretty much play them like a string if you just, you say one thing and they are going to respond 99% of the time without choice, just respond automatically.
The robot mind.
Yeah. So we're caught between those two different things.
Animals masquerading as people.
Yeah. Interesting.
But what is the scene in the Matrix? The Oracle of Delphi.
Yeah.
Know thyself.
That's true.
The journey inward.
Yeah.
Right? Which inevitably leads to, the disregard of material wealth,
right.
To give up your worldly possessions and realize they don't matter.
Right.
Much like a near-death experience where you come back and you say, it's the strangest thing. I didn't care about this place at all anymore.
Yeah.
But we're so tied down like gravity to these passions and ideals and things that you were passionate about as a kid. And you thought, the thought of me as 18-year-old Elliot saying, there's going to come a day where I don't play guitar for months on end.
Mm-hmm.
I would have laughed at. I would have said, it'll never happen. It'll never happen. Here I am.
Yeah.
I barely play guitar. I haven't written a song in years. It's just gone away from me, and it used to bother me,
right.
But it's probably not of a spiritual level. It's more laziness.
Well, it could
anything.
be laziness. I mean, it could be, I think it's Stephen King, and on writing says when you're not actually writing, the boys in the basement are working on an idea.
Stephen King, one of the most fascinating people to ever live.
So who knows? I mean, maybe you are. When I'm doing the dishes, I can still say I'm writing. I'm just I'm either thinking about or not thinking about a story, and I'm either thinking about that story or not thinking about it because it benefits later on getting back to the page. So who knows? Maybe the most amazing song is going to come out of this break that you had.
This is the whole lifespan, right?
Yeah.
You're at a young age, you're a conduit, and you think you're a genius, but
Right.
it's really just happening to
Yep.
you. Seth Gibson has a great quote from his podcast where he says, "I felt like the songs were just falling into my lap," and that's great art when it happens.
Yeah.
And then you have this whole middle years where you're a corporate slut, and
Right.
you're just in it for the money, and it just nothing matters.
Right.
And then you finally hit the bottom of the barrel, and you have this renaissance in your later years of wisdom art,
Sure.
whatever you want to call it, but the path that we're all on, and people have this insane thought that they're going to live after they die, and people like create trusts and wills, and they say, after I die, I want this and this and this to happen. And when you think about the Constitution, it's the same thing, and in there it says, for ourselves and our posterity, which is our future generations. But anybody that has a dad, which is everybody, knows, you can only live up to that so far. Most people rebel against it. And once you're gone, you don't have a choice anymore. But yet we all have this insane need to sort of live after death and to, propagate or keep on our legacy. I've got to hurry. I'm out of time. I've got to create this legacy to leave for after I die.
Yeah.
Which, when you're really, there's a great story. It's about a monk, and I think it's in Korea. And I heard it today on a podcast I listened to, and he's talking about training other monks and how he has a candle, and he's like, I can put this candle out with my mind. And the students go, okay, you want to see me do it? Yeah, okay. All right. I'm going to furrow my brow and look like I'm concentrating. And then the candle goes out. And he says to them, would you like to learn how to do that? And they say yes. And so they give up. They give up all their beliefs and rationale, and they forget their training, and they want to learn how to do it. And then the next week or whatever, another candle, he's like, I'm going to count down from 30. And when I get to 0, it's going to go out. 30, 29, 0 goes out. And they realize, oh, this is a trick candle. And the lesson is that, oh, you all gave up everything you were training and believing in, except for 2 of you who decided, to be brave enough to escape the cave. I don't know. It landed with me.
No, that's fascinating. You're right. I think that our early, as embarrassing as it is to listen to what you played me today, at least I knew that I didn't have any conceit to make money with it or anything like that. I did it with Seth just because it came from a place that I felt like it needed to happen. And then, I had some lazy years and some years of like thinking about what's the best way, how am I going to reach a market? And I've kind of just given up at that. I've given up with that. I don't need fame. I don't need anything. And now maybe, who knows, maybe something good comes.
And this is Hollywood in a nutshell.
Yeah.
Because everybody chucks their integrity out the window to make a quick buck.
Right.
Or to invent a persona to become famous or get money. And much like Jim Carrey, they get to that point and they go, oh, I'm still miserable.
Right.
And it sounds so posh and so fucking entitled to say that. Oh, if only the poor people could realize that, oh my God, you can't even start to say that shit. But, the old Hollywood, it just seems like it's gone away.
Yeah.
And it's different, and it's changed so dramatically to.
Well, here's an experiment for you, or anyone who is listening that has an old film camera in their closet. Go out, grab your cell phone, take a picture of what you think is beautiful with your cell phone, then pull out your film camera, focus, think about the light, aim, fire. I guarantee you that the film picture that you end up having to have developed and wait for and stuff like that is going to be far more beautiful than the one that you just shot off the hip on your cell phone. There's something about, it feels like a memory. It's film, part of me makes, about the nostalgia for Hollywood makes me think it's because it was shot on film. It's because it had a different look. It had a more intention behind it. You couldn't do 1,000 takes. You only had so much film footage. It cost, amount of money to burn it. So you made sure it was perfect, it was beautiful, and you didn't color correct. You didn't do all this tweaking in cinema. All these graphics and stuff afterwards. I don't know. It might be something just we're watching films at 24 frames a second, and that feels like nostalgia. And watching Star Wars and digital is just not quite the same.
It's gotten so good that it's like hyper real.
Yeah.
And now you long for the old days of actual realism.
Yes.
Greatest iPhone camera, this is the age of computer aided photography, where your cell phone takes a picture, it measures the light, it does all these filters, Instagram, all that shit. Film is, natural. I saw a thing online recently. I don't know. It's the world's first selfie, and it's the very early days of photography. I'm probably butchering this, but I think it was 1848.
Okay.
Somebody set up a camera, took a picture of himself, and this is the world's first selfie.
Yeah.
And it's grainy and it looks like shit,
Yeah.
But that's how long photography's been around. And, the art of capturing light and the photographic medium, has always been such an art. And you're talking about film being expensive. This is the art of the limitation.
Right.
I believe a famous Dutch artist, I think its name is De Still or something like that. I'm butchering this, but limiting becomes a creative force.
Yes.
Like a lot of blues guys, they had 1 string, 3 strings, a horrible guitar, made the most beautiful music ever. When you limit yourself, it forces creation,
right,
in a certain sense.
Yeah.
And for years it was like that in film, and then we got to the point where digital was so good, you don't even need to film anything. You can literally CGI everything,
right?
And everybody's doing green screen,
and
it looks real, but it's not natural.
Yeah.
And that's crazy.
Yep, it is. It makes me think it's like screenplay writing is so hard, even though it's 90 pages, because you are confined to a certain 3-act structure. You've got an idea for a story. Great. It's good to have an idea. It's good to know you're going to write a screenplay, but it's how you work within the limitations of that 3-act structure, how you fit everything into that 90 pages and make it work that really brings the artist out in you. You not just blather, you don't throw a 180 page stream of consciousness riff down on paper and call it a screenplay.
And the art of writing 2 stories at the same time, one in the dark, one in the light. Right. And on a surface level, you can watch it and it means one thing.
Right.
You watch it on the hidden level, it means a whole other thing that is never ever seen on the other side.
Yeah.
Fascinating to me. To me, it's just there's I've been really into Jeff Buckley lately. He died at a very young age, and there's a great concert of him in Germany '95 that's on YouTube. It's shot pro. It's got pro audio. This connection you have as a kid with some kind of spiritualness, especially when it comes to creating things, creating music, art, whatever, writing. I've definitely felt like that. I feel like I see a lot of other people that seem to be incredibly creative and expressive at a very young age. And the older you get, the harder it is to hang on to until you have this renaissance, maybe late in life. But watching Jeff Buckley, he's just a kid, But they opened this show in Frankfurt '95. I mean, the minute he opens his mouth to sing, he just changes. He's like ethereal. He's like an angel. But in between sets, it's like immature jokes. And
sure,
this is just a kid. How does he have the wisdom of 1,000 years of a sage at such a young age?
Yeah, that is a fascinating question. I have the same. I'm much more closely associated with a literary writer than I am with, obviously, a musician. But I know that there's it's an old adage. It's like the hook hand in the vehicle's door. I don't know where it starts, but I'll just tell you my version of this lie, which is, I had a professor in my creative writing class who said, do you like the story that you just wrote? And then, hopefully you say, yeah, I do. And then they say, good, because that's the story you're going to be writing for the rest of your life. And I find that that's true for my own hackery. I'm always telling the same story again and again, just with a different framing. But people like Seth Gibson, who you've had on this show, when I listen to his lyrics, it feels to me like he is he's free of that sort of repetition. I mean, he really lives and breathes like organic, just like, yeah, he feels like a sage. And I think that's probably true of more musicians than writers. I mean, let me throw this back at you because I'm actually curious. When you're writing your lyrics, not your music, but when you're writing your lyrics, do you find yourself returning to the same well or not?
It depends on the intention.
Okay.
I think a lot of people write art, music, art, movies with the intention of making money or being commercially viable. The really great art is the last thing on their mind to me. But the idea that you are just a vessel through which some conduit of creative expression flows at a very young age, you think you're a genius, that you're writing all this amazing stuff. And then, you know, some of us get older and some of us think, God, where did that all go? You know? And why was it like, there's a lot of kids that write about love songs that are like premonitions. They come true later in life. They seem to be tapped into some kind of source that they themselves don't even know that they're tapped into. It just kind of happens. And everybody, you know, but this is this whole idea of the death of the ego. What is reality? Are we really who we think we are? I mean, what is the point of all of this? And you know, what is life without art? And you know, I think a lot of the greatest writers, you know, they sort of are inspired in a flash of creativity, and it just comes to them in a dream or all at once, you know, in this flash of inspiration. And to be incredibly ambitious too requires youth, you know, because the older you get, you got more to lose. True. And it's harder and harder. And speaking of incredibly ambitious, for those who don't know, Seth Gibson, you guys collaborated on a very intense project a number of years ago.
Yes, we did.
At the time, I had no idea what you were trying to do, and it made no sense to me. I don't know if you remember, but this is Jesse Stratton and Seth Gibson. So for anybody playing along at home, they collaborated together on an enormous project of great ambition, full of intense lyrics and music blending together in sort of an audio play, I guess is the best way I could describe it. It was called
Tristram's Slumber.
Tell me what that means.
Oh God, you're gonna test my age and my mind. I honestly, I had a reason for that at one point. Tristram was affiliated with the Knights of the Round Table, I believe, and really the story is leaving me. He went off on some kind of quest, leaving behind his lover, and I believe that, God, dude, this could be totally wrong. I believe when he was returning, if the ship that he was on had white sails, he was alive and victorious. If it had black sails, he had died. And in some way or another, I believe that the wrong sails were raised, and she killed herself. And then turned out that he had lived, and then it was a Romeo and Juliet sort of situation.
Well, and this is a callback to your professor writing the same story. Yeah. Maybe there really is only one story. It's always the same in many different shades, many different forms. I knew this project as Ectora.
That's right. Yes.
What does that mean?
Oh God, dude, I don't even remember why we named it that. The fog of time has obscured that for me. I can't remember.
But both of you guys, as very young 20-somethings, working day jobs somewhere on the East Coast, Maryland, New York, with nothing but a 4-track, a guitar, no money, and just pure ambition, inspiration, and creative drive, developed this flash of inspiration that wound its way into this album.
Yes.
Now, the only files I have are of horrible quality. I'm going to play a couple of my favorite songs.
Okay.
I don't want to leave. They're never going to let me go after this.
Shh. Come here. Blue star upon your field of green. He's watched you reach for the sun, spiraling. He's seen you grow, he's seen you thrive, through seasons both wet and dry. He believes the promises that you have made will be made For you have spiraled around his heart, inspired his love as your petals part, and his velvet night sky fades to dawn. Blue star, you both know that you must be gone. But he knows what they do not know, just how strong your will is to grow. He'll keep you in his heart and in his mind, believing you'll return in due time. Though from you his eyes deprived, blue star, he knows you'll continue to shine.
I'm so sorry. I don't know what happened. That wasn't me. I didn't want to hurt you. I love you. I'm yours. I'm sorry.
That's over. It's in the past. Just lie with me. I love you.
So that, doesn't make a lot of sense when you hear it the first time. But if you listen to it enough times, and this is what I was going to get at. Do you remember the first time you played this for me?
I don't. No, I really
Okay.
don't.
It's etched in my mind because I felt so horrible that I traumatized myself. You played a handful of selections when we were living in Fredonia, and my initial reaction was I thought you were doing a comedy.
Sure.
And I didn't get it at
Right.
the time. It didn't make any sense. But revisiting this over the last year and listening to how deep, and the stuff you're writing about is just like what we're talking about. The same old story, warrior going off to fight a battle to come back, love, death, all these deep themes that, you would think as being 20 years old, you're just not mature enough to really understand. But when you actually, read those words and you listen, you let them sink in.
Right.
If you give yourself the time to listen to it objectively, this is one of many songs, but it's just a great, incredible undertaking in terms of recording, which is where I'm fascinated with it because you have a lot of different voice actors. Obviously you wrote the entire thing before you even recorded a lick of it, which is it's a lot of dialogue and it's a lot of writing. And the marriage of Seth Gibson, who composed the music for this, really, it blended well. If you give yourself the time to sit down with it, to me, looking back on it, it gets better with time, and I'm finding a whole new appreciation for it that I never had before.
Wow, Elliot, I didn't realize. I appreciate that.
Well, I'm curious to know how you feel about it looking back, because I know a lot of songs that I wrote 20 years ago. I can't even listen to them.
Yeah,
I hate them.
Yeah, no, that was painful. That was very painful. It's I'm not a musician. That album was done by virtue of Seth's. His willingness to get on board and just my mania and not, I think neither one of us realized the undertaking that we were, it was one of those, just we moved a mountain by virtue of not realizing we were attempting that feat,
That initial spark, the genesis, you had this burning candle, this burning flame. I have to get this out into the world. It's inside of me. I'm going to express it. That to me, it was like, Seth didn't have that because he didn't write the project. Right. But when you brought it to him to compose music for it, it's like one candle lighting another. Yeah. And then you guys are both, you have this both dual flame of creativity.
Yes. And I, whenever stepping on him, he was allowed to kind of he brought life to it. So.
One of the things that impresses me most about this record is your incredible Foley work. Sound effects, footsteps, doors closing. You go for a drive, you hear the car, you hear the radio in the car. None of it you ripped like you can do today.
Right.
Today you can get online, you can get samples for all
Yeah.
this stuff. And if you have the kind of creative drive that you had back then, it's incredibly easy
Right.
to do something
Yeah.
like that. When you guys did this, you had to record everything, every little thing. And the song I'm about to play, I think really exemplifies the marriage of musical composition, Foley work, incredible writing dialogue. And here we go.
The second demon came with nothing, masquerading as the American Mecca's source of repentance. She came to the budding priestess queen knowing she feared the power she was wielding was vain and corrupted with greed. The second appeared homeless. Inspire pity to shake confidence. With bizarrity, plant the seed. Murderous intent in the garb of the most wretched and innocent.
You have any change? Please, spare some change. Change. Have any change? Please, change.
Something like, what kind of tip is that, you know?
Do you have any change?
Get out of here.
I have some change.
Don't encourage these fucking bums.
She's a human being. Here you are.
Oh, child. You have a gift. You're wasting it.
What?
Your friends at home, they're bad for you. They'll use you. They will hurt you. You're on the wrong road.
How do you know?
I know things. You're on the wrong road.
That isn't true. I love my friends and they love me.
Oh, child. Your path is alone.
I don't understand. Some bag lady tells you some nonsense and you're taking it in like it's the truth.
You don't understand. It's not just this. I've been hearing her at night. She tells me I shouldn't be with you. This is wrong.
Who's telling you this?
An old woman. I think it's her.
Who?
The death crone.
But you...
And I think she's right.
What?
I love you so much. I love you so, so much. But I don't think I'm supposed to be with you. Maybe in another life.
Listen to me. Listen. Not everything that approaches you is necessarily what it claims to be.
I can't do this. I'm sorry, but I can't no matter how much I want to. I'm so lost. I'm so scared.
Shh. I'll stay right here with you.
We can't do this anymore.
I'm just gonna sit beside you. Stay with you until you fall asleep. Wake up. Sit up. Look at me. Open your eyes. Did you take these?
You're not supposed to be here.
Well, I am. You guys. What, man? I think we got a situation here. I think she just took an overdose of sleeping pills.
Oh my God.
Come on, man.
Oh my God, why?
Just call 911, all right? Here's the label. Tell them I think she took the whole box. Stay awake. Keep your eyes on me. Hey, fucking no. What does it say? Nothing the police need to see. Stash it, right?
They're on their way.
Stay with us. Come on. God damn it. Keep breathing. We're following the ambulance.
Hey, I'm
No one's calling anyone till we find out what the fuck is going on, alright? Come on. You know the way? Yeah. Please let her be alright.
How the hell you guys ever pulled that off on a 4-track? We're talking multi-guitar tracks, many voiceovers. I mean, all the Foley stuff. For anybody that's not a boomer like us that doesn't remember 4 tracks, you had 4 tracks. Yeah. It was a cassette tape. You could bounce, right? You could bounce 3 tracks to 1, but then you've only got 3 tracks. Right. And then you do another 2 tracks. You can bounce that to 1, and then you can bounce both those to a single channel. It's a mixing nightmare. And to mix all that cleanly on a 4-track, maybe it was an 8-track, I don't know, do you remember?
I think it was a 4-track. I remember, as I recall, Seth was doing it on the fly. I think we were moving out of the apartment fairly soon, maybe even the day after he mixed it down, and he was just sitting there through the whole project, just turning knobs as it played through.
Is it fair to say Seth mixed this entire...
He mixed it on the fly, yeah. As it played, he just mixed based on what he remembered was happening on each track, on the 4-track, and the whole album.
I mean, an incredible undertaking.
Yeah.
Anybody that knows 4-tracks will have a deep respect. When you really listen to all the things that are going on that, and when you do bounce, you lose quality.
Right.
Things start to get a little jumbled. The reason why that is skipping is because the only copy I have came from a CD, which, if anybody remembers CDs, they used to skip like that.
Yeah.
And when they would do that when you were burning them into your hard drive, that's the unfortunate case in this particular example.
I think that, I think probably the only existing copy of it is probably the CD. Actually, I do. I think I have the original 4-track tape still. I still have that original recorded 4-track.
Well, 525 Records would love to house that as
I'd gladly hand
relic.
it to you.
Okay,
please, yeah.
I'm building kind of a Library of Alexandria master tapes,
sure.
And that's one of them
It's
that would
yours.
be great to have.
It's yours, yeah.
When do you remember starting to write this record?
Oh, God. I don't remember. Yes, I do. I do remember sitting down and I was trying to find my equilibrium again, and I gave myself the liberty of writing bad poetry. And so that was it. I just wrote bad poetry, and then it was, and then some dialogue, and I was like, Seth, let's just do this, man. I mean, and I convinced him to do the first song on the album, which was sort of as I recall, it was like just kind of a Celtic sounding guitar piece. And then, hey, let's just do one more. And by I think the third day, he realized he'd signed up for something even bigger. So yeah, it was just a bunch of poetry that I would never show to the world now, but I was crazy enough to.
Exactly how I feel about every song I wrote when I was that age.
Yeah.
Did you have a Kubrick style in your head before you even went to the page?
I largely had an idea of where it was going to go. Yes. I mean, I didn't really realize what I was attempting to write. And I did not write well, which was, it was what I thought was a beautiful relationship. And then looking back on it's like, oh no, that's highly dysfunctional. You would never want that kind of, like, just because the stakes are so high, just because you feel like there needs to be drama all around you, that's not really a real thing. So now looking back at it, I'm like, I have the exact opposite of that, and it's wonderful, but at the time I was like, oh, I'm gonna write a story about real love,
because so much about real love when you're 20
at 22 or whatever,
but so. I mean, such is the cycle of great art. I mean, when you fall in love, that's the muse of many an inspiration and creative outlet. Also, when you break up, a grand divorce is also the same inspiration, only the yin and the yang, the exact opposite. And it was to be young and in love.
Exactly. It was a post-breakup project, and I'm glad I exercised it. It was it was Seth is the one that made it. I mean, really, that thing you could use not a surgeon's scalpel, but a butcher knife to edit down some of the stuff I contributed, but the stuff that he did is just incredible.
I mean, it's some of the craziest guitar work.
Oh my God,
that you'll ever hear in your life. Yeah. Who writes that stuff?
I know.
And the thing is, he just like I can't play a lot of the stuff that I think was good at the time. I have an Open E song on Welcome to Fredonia, which nobody's ever heard, but it's crazy open tuning, total improv. Couldn't play that again if I tried. Seth, I know for a fact, could not play that again if he tried. Yet at the time, it just flew like water, out of him. And I mean, it's some of the most intense, crazy, just experimental composition. It's just a guitar.
Yeah,
that's it.
Yeah,
it's a dude and a guitar and a microphone, and he
incredible. Carries it. Yeah. It's incredible. It really is.
The note selection and how well it fits. He has this dial tone where it's like a feedback for a minute, and it sounds just like a phone. Dial tone. It's like, and I know because I know him. I know he didn't plan that. Nope. It just happened.
Yeah, it was inspired. I mean, he blew me away every time.
But did any dialogue writing occur after the start of this recording?
No, I don't believe so.
Yeah. No. I mean, that's incredible. I mean, it's crazy. Let's do some DVD director cut commentary on this one.
Sure. The keyboard was done by a girl whose name I still remember, though she wasn't a friend of ours. Her name was Allie Hotmer, and she was a music major at Catholic University. And we just kind of approached her all wild-eyed, lack of sleep, like, hey, you play piano, right? You're in my math class? And she's like, yes, who are you? I'm like, I've got this project I need piano for. Would you mind? And she came over to the place, for 4 days and laid down all the keyboard stuff for it. It was cool.
It's the one and only song with keyboards, right?
Yeah, I think so. She may have touched on a couple other parts in the album, but this is largely the one. Yeah. There's a point at which what I like about this, and not being as musically inclined, what I love about this particular piece is that the guitar and keyboards sort of slide slightly out of tempo and then catch each other again. It's got a very strange dreamlike feeling about it, which I really liked a lot. So
I'm not doing this. This is ridiculous. If you kiss me, it has to mean something.
Be quiet. I love you. I want you. I want you.
And this is Allie's voice, by the way. She did the voiceover stuff as well, like a real champ.
Spoiler alert, there's a guitar explosion in this one.
Oh my God, there is, yeah.
just those synth harmonies.
Yeah.
It's like Van Halen 1984
Yes.
with
Yes.
crazy guitar. Oh, that note kills me.
I know. Told him, you know how limes fall out of sync slightly, you know, when your partner is just like not on the same page, and he's like, yeah, started to play this, you know, two guitars that are not quite, and then it resolves, and they're just like, oh yeah, exactly that.
Well, and there's a Portuguese term that's in bossa nova. It's called desafinado. It's slightly out of tune. That's exactly what this is, and it's not always desirable, but sometimes it really works.
Yeah. Now this is a riff on a terrible song that I wrote that the tune Seth is doing the solo version of that.
Well, you know, getting into music theory later in life, almost a lot of great songs are binaries.
Yeah.
Like Eminem 8 Mile, dun dun dun
Yep.
dun 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 dun. You know, it's
Yep.
just two things.
Yep.
Now this one is not a true binary,
Right.
But the main theme of it is binary. But it makes so much sense on a metaphysical level, or whatever. You know, two lovers, yin and yang, day and night. You know, positive, negative. It's corollary.
Yep.
Only Seth Gibson
can
do that.
I know.
It's like two guitars making love.
That's what he was saying. He's like, I'm doing it, or I'm going to reach these guitars into the state of orgasm.
And the synth is the mattress.
Yes, you're absolutely right. That's what he was going for, and you can hear. I think you'll know when the moment of climax comes.
It's the tension, the ascending tension is palpable.
Yeah.
You know. This is the Tantra plateau.
Yes, this is it.
Things are going to be all right now. I can feel it. I am yours. I swear that before the gods, yours forever.
Just bathing in the afterglow.
Yeah.
The post-coital cigarette. This is the kind of shit nobody does anymore.
No.
Right? Because everything's so in your face, and the mediums are all so visual. You know, this is the age of three channels on antenna television.
Right.
Oh, let's we're 20 years old. We have nothing better to do. Let's try to write a song that paints a visual picture of two lovers making love, without using any visual or even auditory or like dialogue in that whole process. And no big deal.
Well,
just whip that up out of nowhere. were.
Yeah, that's how crazy we were. And as much as it is painful to listen to for me, there are moments where I'm just like, oh, something was happening there. So that's kind of the best you can hope for, I think.
And nobody, it's a 5-minute song.
Yeah.
You got to sit there to get to the payoff.
Right.
Nobody has that kind of time
Not
anymore.
anymore.
This is in the age of TikTok. You think this would ever fly?
Never, not in a million years.
This is why art needs to be preserved, because when the machines take over, then there are no more Picassos. Speaking of which, I saw this Picasso video yesterday. It blew my mind. He's painting in real time, black and white, and it starts out as a flower. He draws 3 flowers, and then he draws an outline, and it becomes a chicken. And it's then it becomes a fish. I'm sorry. So the flowers turn into the scales and the gills.
Yeah.
And then before you know it, it's a fish. And then he draws a chicken head. And now the fish tail looks just like a chicken rooster tail. And it becomes a chicken. And it's this morphine art. You know, it starts one way and it just morphs in real time right before your eyes. AI machines are never going to be able to do that. And the deeper we get into this mechanized world, the more of a premium there's going to be on this kind of art, I think, personally.
Well, I hope so.
This is easily the most commercial song on the record that you could play for your parents. And oh, this is really good.
School's out.
Ooh, the playground. Come on.
No way. You're not getting me on that thing.
Come on, silly.
You're amazing.
Standing, the stoic watched, captured unguarded by reckless delight. A smile painted on his so often grim countenance. She rose and once again descended. Dainty toes peeking brazenly from sandals, now modestly curling as rubber soles just barely scrape the spinning earth. And she is rising once more. Smooth bronze legs extending in childish band.
Oh, you're canceled.
That's it.
Listen to those harmonies.
I know.
Ain't no auto-tune.
No.
That's all Seth, right?
No, it's me and Seth.
Okay, who's doing the low part?
Play it. Turn it up. I believe I'm the lower end.
Emerging from a silhouette.
These are barbershop Motown girl group harmonies.
Yeah.
Which, not easy to pull off.
Well, we're attempting it. I think it's less than perfect, but I do remember we were recording those at the very end. And Jesse Vaught, who was our roommate at the time, was leaving for work at like 6 in the morning and passed by the room while we were standing there singing those harmonies and looking at us and just shaking his head and thinking.
Big shout out, Jesse Vaught.
Jesse Vaught, what's up, buddy?
Always the intellectual.
Yes, and he thought we looked crazy. We certainly were crazy.
He was like Google before there was Google.
He really was.
He knew everything.
Yeah, he was a brain.
Children play about the two when he feels the fool.
I don't know. Nobody's ever heard it. Probably not you either. But I secretly recorded Levi,
Yes.
who nobody knows. But
I want a copy of that, by the way.
oh, I've got it. I can give it to you.
You can?
Yes. We had this crazy kid, Levi. He lived with us for a little while. But Jesse Vaught one night was over at the house, and I was taping covertly because I love to do that because I'm like a big covert dude or whatever. But I got Jesse Vaught talking about, they got into this argument about nucleus and proteins and amino acids, and he's just so measured and calm, and he's just going through all the scientific stuff. It's so hilarious to hear it. Jesse Vaught, love you. Whatever happened to him, man?
He is in Western New York, I believe. Last I knew, he was the head chef for a restaurant, a kind of a hoity-toity restaurant on the lake.
He was always the best cook.
Yeah, he was great.
He used to broil those sandwiches, man. Remember?
Yeah, he's a great cook, and that's what he's doing, I believe. Yep.
Well, we just talked over that one.
Well,
but anyway,
I always liked that. That was as far as poetry wise was my least. Has always been my least cringy one. Whenever I hear that one, I'm like, no, it's okay. It's just about a girl on a swing.
If you did this to me and you're like, Elliot, we're going to sit down with all your 90s songs.
It's painful, man.
I would walk out of this room.
It's painful. I'm gritting my teeth, but
Well, you're a trooper.
you.
And this is the beauty in the eye of the beholder. Life is relative. We're in our own little reality bubbles. We think we see the world the same way, but until we collide reality bubbles, it doesn't really become apparent. I see this at the time when it was recorded. I had no understanding. I didn't particularly think it was like, it was impressive that you guys pulled that off, but I didn't really appreciate it.
Sure.
And now I'm here, because I'm archiving everything for the label. I'm listening to all this stuff over and over and over, and I'm like, my God, this, it's like caviar. It starts out salty or whatever. I've never had caviar.
Right.
What's a good example? Sorry, all you vegans, but something that it's an acquired taste.
Yes, it definitely is.
And then once you get it, you're like, yeah, this is gourmet.
Yeah.
This is a delicacy.
Yeah.
Well, I'm drunk.
Well, mission accomplished.
Well, I think we'll end it on that. Jesse Stratton, thank you for doing the 525 Records podcast. It was a blast. I'm so glad you came out and did this in the middle of the end of the world.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It was really a lot of fun.